Hey there, Purrfect Peeps. In this episode, we talk with Stefan Kingham. While working for Honeypot, Stefan actually helped create the Vue documentary. If you haven't seen it yet, you should definitely check it out. We wanted to talk more with Stefan why he was so passionate about making documentaries for technology. We get into Stefan's background, and we find out about the new Svelte documentary coming up. Check it out. This episode is sponsored by Builder.io. Visually build on your tech stack. Welcome back, peeps, to Purrfect.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Now with your amazing hosts, Alex Patterson and Brittney Postma. Hello, Stefan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. Stefan is the head of community at OfferZen. It's a South African job platform for devs, and he's also the creator of M4H, a community-driven marketing agency. And the reason we have him on today is he also happens to work on tech documentaries such as Vue.js and GraphQL, and we might talk about another one as we get going here. So welcome, Stefan. That's kind of the brief intro, but do you want to add just kind of a little bit of your background and kind of how you got into tech documentaries?
Yeah, sure. Once again, hey, everyone. I'll start out by saying, because I think I mentioned this to both of you before we started and to everyone who's listening, I'm always a bit afraid, I think, of talking about marketing to devs because I know it's pretty much like a no-go zone. But I'd like to think that the kind of marketing I do for devs is community-driven. But anyway, yeah, so like my basic background, I've been thinking about this pretty much all day, how I can give this answer without going super deep into marketing bullshit. So I'll try and give it kind of like, I'll try and shorten it up a bit. So in essence, I kind of came into marketing. I did, business school, all that blah, blah, and ended up doing marketing, I think, because as a kid, I used to really like ads on TV, commercials. Like I used to find some commercials pretty fun. And I was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing that one day. But then I actually got into marketing and I discovered all of the, paid marketing, affiliate marketing, email marketing, blah, 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 blah stuff. And realized that I kind of despised it. So I did that for a while. I did that for maybe like 6-7 years, working in agencies and in startups in Asia and in Europe. And then I kind of came back to Europe. So I live in Berlin. And I kind of realized that, it was kind of like that time in my life and in my career to kind of do a job so that I could actually like sleep at night. I was like, I would like to do something that I feel good about. I know that sounds super cheesy, but honestly, that's how I felt. And I was lucky enough to find a company. So the company in question is Honeypot, which is also a developer-focused job platform, which is based in Germany. I was lucky enough to find a company that felt the same way about marketing as I did. So my boss, the team, everyone pretty much despised marketing. And we were like this creative group of people who wanted to do like cool things for people. We don't want to do spammy stuff. It just kind of felt good. It was like, yeah, we're on the same page. And then obviously you need to be lucky enough to be in a company that's willing to invest in not shitty stuff. So I think that, yeah, pretty much that's like the short version is that, I kind of went through that whole like cycle of I don't like what I do, found a cool job, found a cool team. And then the big thing, and this is the interesting thing, I think maybe for developers potentially, is that, all right, Honeypot is a developer-focused job platform. And the company that I work for now, OfferZen, is also a developer-focused job platform. And within that job, you have two things that many developers, I don't want to generalize, but that many developers tend to hate. You have one, marketing, no go. Two, HR. There are many HR people, HR managers sending crappy in-mails on LinkedIn. There are all of these like, hey, front-end rockstar, hey, back-end guru, all of that bullshit. Sorry for my usage of the word bullshit. I tend to say it a lot. You have all of that stuff going on. So I ended up in a job where I didn't want to do traditional marketing. And even if I somehow wanted to, it would not work. It just would not work. That
makes total sense to us too. Like developers just get turned off maybe by marketing. So it makes perfect sense that you just wanted to sleep better and feel better about your job. And did you get specifically into tech-focused documentaries because of Honeypot and OfferZen being about developers?
Yeah. Originally, yes. So like the funny thing, there's a bit of a difference between my time at Honeypot and my time at OfferZen. So Honeypot, I kind of just like landed in it. I happened to join a developer-focused job platform. I happened to be in an environment where normal marketing would not work. It would not cut it. And we had to think out of the box. And that's where the whole like documentary idea came out. I think that the first person to come up with the idea was like my boss at the time. Her name is Emma Tracy, and she was quite close to the GraphQL community in Berlin. And Honeypot was co-organizing GraphQL Conf, which is like the biggest GraphQL conference in Europe and perhaps even in the world. At least it was at the time. And so we already had like this kind of connection to the community. And then I'm not sure who knew Josie Valim. I think again it was maybe Emma, but someone knew the creator of Elixir. And so we had an opportunity to, you know what, why don't we just do a documentary about Elixir? I think we were first and foremost storytellers, creative people, and we didn't want to do marketing, and we decided we can turn marketing into a product of its own. So that's how I kind of landed in it. But then Offizen, as I was saying, is a bit different because I decided that I wanted to join Offizen because I wasn't done with dev marketing. I was like, I love it. You know, I really kind of like caught the bug, if that's the right way of putting it, at Honeypot. And then I was like, you know what? Then when I left Honeypot, I worked other communities for a year and a half. And at some point it was like, no, I want to go back to dev documentaries and dev community stuff.
That's awesome. Have you ever done anything other than tech documentaries? How did you get into the documentary space with having the marketing background?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not just, if anyone's wondering, I'm not a videographer. I'm not the person who actually films a documentary. So at Honeypot, I was head of community. At Offizen, I'm head of community. So I was managing the team. And within the team, there were videographers, there were event managers, there were writers. We had a whole media platform. But it just so happened that documentaries were by far the most successful like product, let's say. You know, we would do an event and maybe we'd struggle to get 500, 700, 800 people, but we do a documentary and we could get 1 million views. And we kind of realized that, you know, if you think about the investment we were putting into it in terms of resources, in terms of time, in terms of money, it just made sense to kind of focus more on documentaries. And I kind of just landed in it. It just happened. And I think I've been way more involved with the documentaries since I've been at Offizen because I'm a one-person team, so I have to be more involved.
That's awesome. That sounds like the best of both worlds, how it helps you and promotes the marketing side, but also is really good for the dev community that you're supporting and showcasing.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, right? Like, that's the thing about dev documentaries. The fun thing is that I've got many dev friends who don't like these documentaries, right? I've got friends who, for example, when we put out the GraphQL documentary, a lot of people said it's Facebook propaganda. Or when we put out the Vue.js documentary, there are people like framework bashing, saying React is way better. This is crap. You know, like not everyone is going to love these documentaries, but I think that overall, based on the number of views we got, based on the number of like the engagement we saw on social media, but also based on the fact that, hey, I can reach out to Svelte, and we'll talk about that. I can reach out to Svelte, I can reach out to Rich Harris, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. I love these documentaries. That tells me that there are people out there who like these documentaries and they're worth doing.
Especially when you're getting like 1 million views. I think that calls out to it too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was by far the most successful one, the Vue.js one. And I think in many ways, because Vue.js was quite simply the biggest framework we were lucky enough to collab with and do a documentary about. But yeah. So anyway, like long story short, I love it. It's really
And you're
cool.
going to get haters no matter what you do, especially in the dev community. There's always going to be somebody there to start a dumpster fire conversation. So.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Builder.io, visually building the web. Builder.io has one of the most powerful visual editors in the industry. Unlike other tools, Builder actually produces the code for you. You don't have to completely switch out your framework either, just use one of the handy SDKs that are available. There's no limits to what you can build. Instead of limiting your marketing team, start to optimize and let them do the work. This will allow your web developers to get back to the hard work that it takes for other components, allowing your team to do A/B testing and personalization. Stop worrying about bugs in production. Just use the site as it is, then you can analyze and start converting all of your customers with Builder's built-in heat maps. Stop limiting your growth with developers' long lead times. Start building, optimizing, analyzing, and start growing faster. Don't take my word for it. You can sign up for free today and start building the web visually with Builder.io.
like I said, I worked briefly with gig workers. So by gig workers, I mean DoorDash drivers, riders, Uber drivers. And I was trying to kind of implement a similar strategy. I was trying to advocate for gig workers, to create stories about what gig workers go through, to create stories about what it's actually like to work for DoorDash and this and that. And that got like a lot of, like what I'm trying to say is that, yes, developers might hate on some stuff, but overall, there's at least, if I'm doing a documentary about Svelte, there is a massive community of people who are going to love it. Yes, there are some people who aren't going to like it as much, but there's a big community that's going to love it. In the other communities I've worked in, people are like, why a documentary? And sorry for my language again, but who gives a shit, right? So so that's something I like about the dev community, is that there is a big fandom element, and that kind of helps.
Yeah. Do you find like some of the bigger frameworks feel like they're too good for like the documentaries, that the attitude like you're getting where you just, they don't want one, they don't need one?
Yeah. All right. Obviously, I can't name names, and I don't want to like
No, yeah.
I don't want to stir the pot. But yes, there. I have had the opportunity to speak to maintainers working on specific languages or frameworks who seem to think they are above it, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because the weird thing is that it's not like the big ones don't care and the small ones really care. There are some big ones who really do care, and then there are some big ones who really don't care. So it's not just because like these ones are big, therefore they don't care. These ones are small, therefore they care. It just depends on the personalities working on the core teams many times.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. So how do people tend to react when you ask them to do an interview? Like that kind of goes a little bit along with that, but is it just the ego of the person, or?
Generally speaking, I have to admit, like it's pretty much always positive.
Awesome.
I'm actually lucky enough that I've probably asked overall like 30, 40 people, 40, 50 people for interviews, and one person has said no. So
wow.
that in itself shows me that, like, generally speaking, people are down for it. Now, the weirdness usually comes in when we're shooting. Like beforehand, they'll be like, yeah, down, cool, sounds great. Sometimes when you actually land there, you're like in their room, you're in their apartment and whatever, and then you can tell that all of a sudden they're like, what am I doing? This freaks me out. And then like actually like there are some touching things that some people say. For example, Rich, I really liked filming Rich Harris because he was very he's like extremely humble and modest about the whole thing, almost basically saying things along the lines of, I don't understand why we are interesting enough for a documentary, which is the kind of approach that I find nice. You know, if people are like that, it's like, hey, I'll explain to you why you are worth it, but at least you're not being cocky. And it's always nice to work with people who aren't overly cocky. And then sometimes some people will say stuff like, oh, my wife or my family, they don't fully understand what I do. This documentary will help them understand that. And these are things that are kind of nice. You know,
that's awesome.
I might need a whole video just created for that then.
What about
to share with people?
There's still confusion on what I do all day long.
Yeah,
it's like, can you fix my printer?
Yes.
No.
I know that must be. I mean, it's such a running meme, right? Such a running joke, and I think it's particularly relevant when it comes to backend frameworks and backend languages, because at least people who are working on the front end, you can show something. But for example, okay, I'm going to kind of name drop here, but I think at this point it's fine. I'm also working on a documentary right now about Laravel, and Laravel being a PHP framework, a lot of the people working on the Laravel team, if their spouse or their kids or their family don't understand tech that well, they really don't understand what they're doing. It's like, you can't even show me something. You can't even, like, at least someone working on Svelte could potentially be like, okay, look, I'm doing interactive journalism. This is a piece, and this is how Svelte works. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to Laravel, it's like
backend
stuff.
Way.
Exactly. So at least by speaking in the documentary, people can get a bit of a better understanding.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is the best thing you think about making the tech documentaries?
So like the best and the worst thing is pretty much the same thing, but it's different kind of parts of it. So the best and the worst thing is the tour. And by the tour, I mean, like the production schedule.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, from beginning of October to end of November, I was nonstop traveling, filming the Svelte and Laravel documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Wow.
I wasn't the one filming, but I was there and asking the questions and dealing with the logistics and making sure that the person is there on time, making sure the videographer knows what we kind of want to be doing and that we're getting all the right shots. And that tour, that like 45-day tour, involved 16 or 17 different countries. And
Oh my gosh.
it was literally like, at times, not all the time, but at times it was literally, we film in this country this day. We finish at 7 p.m. We take a train and we arrive in the other country at like 1 a.m. We go to bed, we film the next morning at 8 a.m. and we keep doing that for like 2 weeks straight.
Oh
So
my
like
goodness.
that's probably
That's
the most
intense.
tiring part. Yeah.
That is very intense.
I think that, and then obviously, I've been kind of fortunate that it's not really ever happened. Well, maybe a tiny bit, but not too bad. But one of the worst parts can be, you're interviewing someone and it's really hard to say because obviously you don't want to kind of like call out anyone or anything. Everyone's trying their best. But sometimes, like me, like I'm pretty stressed even just talking right now. Sometimes you can be interviewing someone who just gets a bit overwhelmed in the moment, and either you feel like they're just kind of like reading out lines that they've pre-prepared in their head, and you're like, this is not what we want for a documentary, and I need to be nice about it, but I need to kind of like encourage them to, all right, let's try a different way. Or sometimes people just get like very scared and awkward in the moment. So it's something that you have to deal with sometimes.
I get that. I was that person.
No, you were great. You were great, honestly, Brittney.
We've had people on that completely like just talking like crazy before, and I click the record button and they go like, phew. I'm like, what just happened? Like, what was the click there? We could have been
It's
recording
just
that
like
whole
stage fright.
time. It's so interesting, and like I get it too. I don't want to like make fun because it's a hard thing to get through. As an introvert myself, to do this podcast was always a goal of mine because I was so nervous to get on camera and everything. And it takes a long time just to be comfortable with who you are and do the thing, I guess. So definitely understand.
It's
And I
really
think,
made me a lot better at just talking to people in general. I think if I had went to Svelte Summit without doing this podcast, I would have been a completely different person, like hiding away in the corner, not like getting out there networking, talking to people, because this made it feel more natural where I'm having conversations with people I would never meet every week. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you were great as well. Like I said, to film at Svelte Summit, like it was really easy to film you, to work with you. And I think that you had like pretty hard, like difficult conditions because there was a lot of noise in the background. It's not like we were doing like a shoot like in a private room. It was literally at Svelte Summit, everyone talking behind you. And I think you did a great job. I think also that one thing that happens to some people is that if I ask them like very technical questions, if I like, a random kind of example question that I might ask people, for example, in a Svelte documentary, maybe I'll say to someone, what is I'll say like, what makes Svelte a more productive tool than say React or Vue, or something along those lines. The answer will be somewhat technical. Then I see that people are very like fluent in that moment. It's like, oh, there's this, there's that, and they get deep into tech stuff and they can talk a lot. But then as soon as I ask a question like along the lines of, what do you think about the Svelte community? Something which is a bit more like about people and about social situations, then maybe it's a bit harder for them to elaborate. So I see that sometimes.
It's more personal too, though. I feel like those questions are almost easier for me to answer because I feel like it's just honest. I mean, the technical
There's no
ones
wrong
too,
answer, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there probably is wrong answers. You can be very rude, but since we're talking about this Svelte documentary so much right now, do we have a date that it's coming out?
So we don't have a specific date. Again, because so I'm a one-person team, but I'm also not doing everything, right? So like I'm in charge of like the pre-production, production, and post-production of the documentary, and I work with independent cinematographers on that. But then we also have big other things that we do around these documentaries, like premieres. right? We do a big premiere. We wanted to do an in real life premiere. COVID makes that pretty difficult, but instead we're doing a big online premiere, and it takes a lot of organization. So we're taking it. I've got a few other people who work in separate teams with me at OfficeIn, and together we kind of work on this entire documentary plan. And we can only do one documentary at a time. So right now we're getting ready to release the Laravel documentary, as I mentioned, and that's going to go out mid-Feb. And the Svelte documentary is going to be the next one. And I want us to do 4 documentaries per year. So basically that means that the Svelte one will most certainly be in May.
Okay. Like one a quarter, basically.
Exactly. I guess that's the business way of putting it. Yeah, 1 per quarter. And yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, I mean, when I was working at Honeypot back in the day, we do 1 documentary per year maybe. And now that I'm at OfficeIn, something I'm really excited about is that we're being given the investment, sufficient investment to pull off 4 in a year. So it's crazy intense, but I think it's exciting for the dev community, or at least for those who like these documentaries, because instead of having to wait a whole year for the next one, you know, it's going to be like every quarter there'll be a new big one. So that's cool.
That's awesome. But it sounds like it's very intense for you, traveling like 6 to 8 weeks, and then you have to do all of the post-production after that. I can't imagine how your schedule looks.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't complain, right? Like I was saying, I could be doing crappy traditional marketing. I'm not, so I'm happy about that. I love working with developers. I love filming developers. I get really interested in the stories while I'm working on them. So like the last month or 2, I've been obsessed with Svelte. And so it's a cool thing. And yeah, I can't complain. Like I wouldn't change my job.
So why did you choose Svelte of all the other frameworks that are out there, languages that you could do one on? What drew you to Svelte initially?
It's a mix of things. Like the main thing I could say, the very first time I heard of Svelte, when we released the Vue.js documentary at Honeypot, that documentary went like really big. Like I said, 1 million views. And so we got like many comments. And yes, a lot of the comments are just saying, oh, I love Vue. Oh, I love Vue. This is great, blah, blah, blah. But there are many comments where people suggest the next documentary, right? So I can't tell you the number of times I've seen do a React documentary. I've probably seen that like thousands of times at this point, but I remember reading through the comments and seeing a lot of like, do a Svelte documentary, do a Svelte documentary, do a Svelte. And I'd never heard of Svelte. This was like 3 years ago, maybe, or 2 years ago, 2 years and a half, anyway. And so I remember doing my research on Svelte, and because I'm more of a brand person myself, I'd say more brand than marketing. What stands out to me is when a community or when a framework puts effort into looking good, if that makes sense. You know, like some frameworks put more effort into that than others. I think Laravel is a good example of a framework that puts a lot of effort into like its visual appearance and its brand. And I saw that with Svelte. It just like stood out. Then also I'm English, so there's the bias of like Rich Harris being English, and I was like, I wouldn't mind interviewing him. So that's how it started. But then obviously I work for a company. I can't just make a decision on my own. In order to convince the company, I had to kind of show the company that there was a solid reason to do a documentary about Svelte. And I think the big thing that kind of encouraged the leadership to kind of, okay, let's do Svelte, was the developer survey, the Stack Overflow developer survey results, and the State of JavaScript results, which I think pretty much both said that Svelte had the highest satisfaction rates and
the most loved framework.
Exactly, the most loved framework. And so that was a big thing. Like that's confirmation. That's not just comments. That's not just a feeling. Like that's confirmation that Svelte is really popular. And then I shouldn't say this. I think it's fine because now it's public knowledge. But before he announced it publicly, Rich told me about the Vercel thing, and so I knew that like, oh, this is a story, you know. There's the like, you also need to think a bit like a journalist, I guess, and then you're like, oh, there's actually an evolving story here that we can talk about within the documentary, and it just made complete sense.
For sure. Yeah, that was huge news. And that's one of the things that I love so much about Svelte is the community truly is passionate about it. It's all community driven. Like it had no funding, it had no backing. It's just the community supports it and loves it that much that it's grown. And I think Laravel's the same way, right?
Well, I think the good thing is that I love doing documentaries or events or anything about independent frameworks. Now, I'm not taking a dig at the likes of React or TypeScript or whatever. I'm just saying that Svelte and Laravel in particular, they're like extremely independent. And they both have like, what is that term that many people use in the open source space? The benevolent dictator for life thing, the BDFL, right? I asked Rich if he was a BDFL, and he was like, I'm not a BDFL, don't call me that. You know, he was like, no. But ultimately, even if he doesn't want to see himself like that, ultimately he is still the face of Svelte in a way. You know, he's the creator, and I love these frameworks that have this like creator. You know, it's not a company project. It's like there's this one person who's got this really interesting story of, oh, one day it was Thanksgiving and I started writing a blog article about my, and that's kind of what Rich told me when we first had the call, and I was like, this is super cool. Like, it's really cool.
Yeah, that he has the brain to create something because he had a need at work is just unfathomable to me. I can't.
Oh, like even more so for me, I have to say, like, as someone who's not a dev myself, I can't even imagine. This is also something that, like, don't want to blab, but one of the best things about doing tech documentaries and working with open source people is, again, this is going to be my little violin moment, but like the selflessness of it all. Like, okay, don't get me wrong, I know that open source also leads to certain gains. Like, you can become more popular, you can potentially make money, you can potentially have better job opportunities. I see that, but ultimately it's still a very kind of like, at the core, a very selfless thing to do that I have not seen in any other industry. Go and ask a marketing person to work like for free every night just to improve marketing tools. It ain't gonna happen. And so I just find that really inspiring as well.
It is, yeah, for sure. And you've spoken a little bit to this topic, but you found GraphQL because someone at your company knew the person that was running it. And you said that in the comments, like you've seen, like, oh, go do this documentary. But how do you find the topics and people to interview?
So it starts with the choice of the framework or the language.
Okay.
So I start there, right? And like I said, there are factors. There's popularity of the framework. There's usage. There's distribution potential. Now it's going to sound very marketing-y, but it would be crazy for me not to talk about dev Twitter, because to devs maybe it's just Twitter, but to a non-dev it's dev Twitter. It's insane, right? Like, I don't know any other group of people or any other community or industry where Twitter is such a big thing, where there are such like massive followings. So I kind of take all of these factors into account. And by distribution potential, I'm talking, if I see that there's a certain framework, okay, I'll just give an example. Am I the only one who's noticing right now that everyone is talking about remix? Like on my Twitter is just remix.
That's all it is right now.
It's just, I pick up, like, at some point in time, it's like, okay, something is super popular. Everyone is talking about this. Then I do a bit more research. I kind of see who's the creator, who are the core maintainers, who are the community members. If they have interesting things to say, and if, like, optionally, this isn't a must, but it's a good thing if it is, if they have like big followings, everything's combined for this to be a success, because ultimately the idea behind these documentaries is that they should share themselves. We don't do any paid marketing. We don't, we don't market these things. Basically, we put it out there, and we hope that the cast, the people within the documentary will share, and these people have followings, and their followers will share, and it's like a snowball effect. And at some point, it just lands on Hacker News, and you're like, yay, wow, great. Or it lands on Reddit, and you're like, oh, great. So that's kind of the idea. So anyway, so we kind of I choose a framework based on all of these factors. And then once I've chosen a framework, the people who are going to be in the documentary, it's a mixture of what I just said. So, like, sometimes there's a bit of a distribution element, but there's not just that. It would be stupid to do it just based on that. There's also, like, what is the story that you want to tell, and who are the people who can tell this story? And so when it comes to Svelte, it was super important for me. I think it's important for any framework to tell the story of the technology. So who were the people initially who built the core elements? Like, who were the core team members who built it out from the get-go? Then you have to start thinking about the community that grows around the framework. So in Svelte, for Svelte, it's like Svelte Society. So then you have Swix, and you have Kevin, and you have Anthony Jones, and you have, like, and then I kind of explore a bit deeper, and I see Svelte Sirens, and then I'm like, okay, Brittney, and so on. And as you kind of imagine the story that you want to tell, the technology, the community, and then at some point you have to think about, okay, we need a company adoption example, because you need something that kind of like stamps the authority on the framework. Like X company uses Svelte or X company uses Vue or whatever, and that's an important part of the story as well. So then I'll look for people working in interesting companies that are using that technology. So it's like a mixture of core team members, important community members, and people working with this technology and doing interesting things.
I have to ask you off camera who that is and what companies they're working for, because I need all the inside knowledge about where Svelte is.
For Svelte, okay, like whether this is on camera or not, like it doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay.
I can kind of elaborate on this, but to be completely honest, Svelte has been a bit more difficult not because there aren't companies using it, because of course there are. But Svelte, it turns out that in many situations, the big companies that are using Svelte, like for example, Apple is using Svelte. I've heard from many people now, from Svelte core team members, that Apple is using Svelte for Apple Music, or at least something is happening there. And I also heard that another company is using it. But the problem is, the people who they don't have developers in the company working on it. They have like, what do you call it, consultants.
Oh, so like an agency almost.
Yeah, and then the consultants are not allowed to speak about it.
Wow.
Because contractually they're not supposed to say. So you have these really interesting examples. Like, I wish we could talk about that, but I'm not allowed to talk about that. The people who can speak about it cannot speak about it.
That's very interesting.
It's kind of like what I ended up doing for Svelte is I ended up thinking, you know what, there are some interesting. I kind of went with a bit of an interactive journalism focus, to be completely honest. Obviously, there was Rich, the whole New York Times element. There's a woman called Elisa who works with Rich there, who's done some great pieces at New York Times using Svelte. And I kind of went with that and developed a bit on that. And then obviously got Rich to name drop some of the bigger companies that are using it, even if we can't dig deep into the stories.
He may not have known before Svelte Summit, but Granger, the company that I work for, we're using Svelte and Svelte Kit there. I was hired to build Svelte components. So I know Granger is using it. I mean, I know a couple of I know Amelia Wattenberger was using it where she was before, but I don't think she is anymore.
Yeah, we interviewed Amelia. So she spoke a bit about, what is it called? Pudding. These days she's working at GitHub, but yeah, I think that we managed to still get like, at the end of the day with these documentaries, you have to test things out. And I feel like the Svelte documentary is going to have less of a focus on company adoption, still some focus on that, but more of a focus on community, because every time I'm working with a framework, there's always something that stands out more. And with Svelte, it was like full on community for me personally. I was like, wow, there's really like something quite unique about the community. And it became more of a focus during the production.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too.
I think there's a lot of developers that are super passionate about Svelte, but the job side of it's not there. We were just kind of discussing frameworks and how long they like take to actually mature and become part of enterprises. And let me bring this up because I just actually were talking about this at work. So this is kind of the trend graph in the last year. And if you take this out a few more years, and this is just NPM based, so there's a lot of other metrics you can check out. But the bottom line down here is Svelte. And the other frameworks, like React is the top green line there, Angular, Vue.
What is that dip for all of them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that Christmas or something?
It may be
like Christmas week, probably.
Is it? Yeah.
Everyone took off. At least it's somewhat consistent.
Yeah, but I think
I think it speaks to what you were talking about, though, Stefan, as far as like making a documentary and making something that people are interested in. I think people are interested in Svelte for sure. And as far as the documentary goes, I think people will really enjoy it and you'll get a lot of views and things like that. I don't think it necessarily has a big piece on the framework itself. Like there's a lot of kind of emotion that is built into Svelte, and when you're passionate about something like that, it's gonna like speak well when you do a documentary.
Yeah, and I think also like one thing that kind of, and this is one of the things that I find interesting about interviewing people in general, is that you learn a lot while speaking to people. And I think Rich and Swix both kind of emphasize the point that to many people, Svelte is their framework of selection. Like it's the framework that they choose. React might be the framework that their company chooses for them, you know. Maybe they have to work with that, but then Svelte is the one that they choose to work with. And yes, maybe there are way less developers using Svelte than there are developers using Vue or React, but that's why you get like the whole highest satisfaction rate and most loved framework stuff, because those who are using it want to use it. And I think that's really powerful as well.
Yeah, and
100%.
they've said too that if it was the other way around and it was more used, you would probably have less people wanting to use it. So, I mean, it becomes a little less loved the bigger it is. So that may be a little bit why React is less loved, because it's very well used.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably like that, like not to go all philosophical, but I guess this is the way of the world in many ways, right? It's like when something is niche and like community driven and people choose it and it's not forced upon them, then they like it. And then, you know, so I find it interesting because like me looking at it from, you know, I guess like when I first started speaking to Rich, when I first started speaking to the Svelte community, there's part of me which is like, and so, what are your hopes like for the future of Svelte? Like, do you hope that it's going to become like really big? Do you hope that more companies are going to use it? And I guess I kind of assumed before like speaking to people that people would be like, oh, yes, I hope this and that. But then it turns out that a lot of people are like, don't really want it to become the next React, you know? And it's like an interesting take where it's like, no, don't get me wrong. We want it to kind of like thrive, but do we want it to be like this industry standard, this like juggernaut that everyone uses? Like, probably not.
Yeah, that's awesome. So looking forward, what other technologies or communities would you like to make documentaries about?
So, I mean, if anyone has listened to me blab like up until this point, one thing I would say is that I'm always down actually for suggestions. Like I actually ask people a lot during shoots when I'm shooting. I'm like, what documentary would you like to see next? Or when I'm speaking to my Twitter friends or dev friends. So that's one thing I just wanted to put out there. Like if people have strong ideas about what could be great, I'm all ears. But I do have like my own kind of personal opinion on what I would like to do. Take it like this is just my ambitions. This doesn't mean that I'm speaking to them, nor does it mean that I have an opportunity, nor does it mean that it's going to happen. But I think that personally speaking, for story reasons and whatever, I'm personally quite like into the idea of doing a documentary about a language rather than a framework. I just think it would be an interesting kind of switch. And so I know that some people will probably argue that, well, TypeScript isn't a language, but I think that TypeScript call themselves a language, and I would like to do a documentary about TypeScript. It's very different to like all of the other ones that we've worked with. You know, it's obviously like not independent, but I think that I don't know. I'm just intrigued by TypeScript in general, and then otherwise, you know, you meet people during shoots who are. It just so happens this person is the creator of this framework. So, you know, I'll be completely honest about this. It's a funny thing. When I was at Svelte Summit, I knew that Guillermo, I think it's Guillermo, but I think anyway, I know that he's obviously, you know, CEO of Vercel. But up until like a few days before Svelte Summit, I didn't know. I don't know, stupid me. I didn't know he was the creator of like Next.js.
Yeah.
And then when I'm speaking to him and he starts talking about Next.js, I'm like, oh yeah, he's the creator. And then obviously, naturally, like in my head, it's like, we should maybe do a documentary about Next.js. So like, it depends on the opportunities that come along and the conversations you have with people, you know?
I was wondering if that's where that was going to go, if Next.js was going to kind of be, because you met, I don't know. Is it a British thing like to call him Guillermo? I say Guillermo.
I only call him Guillermo. It could be wrong. I call him like that because I believe, I'm talking about him like on a podcast, so strange, but I believe he's Argentinian, is he not?
Oh, okay. So is it?
And I think that I have a friend personally here in Berlin who's Argentinian, who's called Guillermo, and he tells me to say sh. So that's why.
We have been just saying it incorrectly.
It's correct. I actually asked him when we had him on. I was like, "Am I doing this right?" He's like, "It's fine either way." So he's very humble about it.
I was going to say he is one of the most humble, like genuine
humble
people.
Yeah.
Like, he's amazing, and so is Rich. They were both just so welcoming and like down to earth. Not like, you don't get those big egos like you think of with these creators, and it's incredible.
Yeah, that's actually a really big kind of like not that, again, this isn't about me. This is a project which falls under Office N, and there are way more considerations than my opinion. But because I'm like leading the project, it's true that I do put a lot of, I don't know, it's a very like passion-driven kind of job. Because it's very intense, you get very emotional and passionate and emotionally attached. So if someone speaks to you in a way that you don't find nice, it is quite easy to be like, I don't want to do a documentary about this team. You know, it's just because it's such an emotional kind of thing. But I have to say that when I was speaking to Guillermo, I got like really good vibes from him. Like I said, Guillermo hasn't told me, yes, let's do a documentary about next. So I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm just saying it would be cool. And also, while filming the Laravel documentary, we were lucky enough to interview Adam Wathan, the creator of Tailwind CSS, well, Tailwind. And that's also something that, to me, feels like a very interesting potential documentary. So, you know, we'll see where things go.
I was going to say that about TypeScript too. TypeScript has a very large community around it. There's people that are very passionate about TypeScript. Tailwind also has a large community following and very passionate if you use it. If you don't use it, there's a less passionate side, but maybe passionate, but in not a great way.
Yeah, but I think I've seen the same thing about TypeScript, right? I don't know if you were talking about Tailwind right now or like TypeScript. I've seen a lot of like hate towards TypeScript online, but you know, like I said, if we were to do a documentary about React, I'm saying like if we were, I know that people would also be like, oh, Facebook propaganda, serving the juggernauts. How about the smaller frameworks that need this kind of awareness boost and stuff? So like, can't really win. But no, actually though, overall, like I've mentioned a few different frameworks, and languages, but overall, I'm just interested in telling the stories of interesting frameworks, communities, especially if there's an interesting story. So quite like, we want to do 4 per year. I don't see myself not doing this dev documentary stuff anytime soon. So at this rate, let's do them all.
You're gonna run out.
No, I think I feel positive that the cool thing about tech, I feel, is that there's so much like constant evolution. Like I didn't know about Remix 3 months ago.
Yeah, Remix, and then before that was Astro. So Astro's got a lot of popularity. Remix, you got a few more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and there's also like Inertia and stuff like that. I mean, like there are all these frameworks that I keep hearing about, and so and you know, and then you still have those massive ones that we haven't even spoken about, like massive languages like Python or you know, something like that. It's like a no-brainer. Like that would make a lot of sense if we can get through to the team. And even though Ruby isn't as popular these days, if the creator is really intriguing, I want to do it. And I find Matt, the creator of Ruby, to be very interesting. So there are so many avenues.
There are. Well, I guess that's a good time for us to transition to our Purrfect Picks.
I did want to ask one thing before we switch over.
Sorry.
I think we had chatted offline a little bit, but do you find yourself wanting to become a developer after doing all this?
Yeah, so we were talking about this. So like, like I said, like I said in the comments. So yeah, I actually do. As I get really into the projects, so like the Svelte one, I find myself listening to people's interviews and being like, I get what you're saying, but I also don't get what you're saying. Like within the scope of everything I've heard, I can deduce, I can kind of understand what you're probably referring to. But ultimately, if someone talks to me about a technical difference between framework A and framework B, I can't fully grasp it. And so that's where I kind of started this idea that, you know what, I actually want to learn to code. And I think that especially as it's COVID times and lockdown again here in Germany, I feel like it would be a good project. Like it would be a good personal project to kind of like get on, which is like learning to code, and hopefully within the space of 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, a year, not to become great, but to dabble in Svelte. That's kind of like my goal.
That's so awesome. I'm glad you remembered that, Alex.
Yep. Make sure you ping Brittney. She's all about Svelte.
Yeah, I know. As soon as I get past the basic blocks of HTML and CSS and JavaScript, then I'm coming at you.
Yeah, definitely learn those fundamentals first. That is one of the things that I say. But Svelte is also one of the easiest to transition to because you can use those vanilla skills that you have. So I agree. Get those fundamentals.
Yeah, that's why Svelte completely stood out to me. It's like everyone's talking about the simplicity of it all. I did that little tutorial thing, like on the Svelte website,
Yeah.
the interactive kind of thing, and I was like, okay, I can't really do much, but I can see that I could grasp it with effort. So
yeah, I think once you, like you said, you've done a little HTML and CSS for a few years. So once you kind of get the grasp of what it's doing, and I love the Svelte tutorial because it kind of like shows you how to do it, and like you have different ways. You read about it, and then you can put show me, or you can just actually type in the REPL. And I like that it like gives you that interactivity and helps you learn.
Yeah, it's really cool. And did you hear about this is a very random thing, but did you see that Girls Who Code Doja Cat collaboration thing on Twitter?
No, I didn't.
It's very random. It's just like I don't know what the deal is. It's pretty random, but it was like, yeah, Girls Who Code did a little like collab project with Doja Cat. Okay, and my girlfriend and I, we happen to listen to a lot of Doja Cat, so I was like, okay, interesting. And basically, you're live coding like the video, or you're not really coding that much. They just basically they stop at one part of the video and they say, oh, you can paint her nails, or you can like decide what color the background is, and you just have to change like a number or a color.
But I did see something on Twitter where they were painting the nails, and I didn't realize it was Doja Cat, but that's awesome. We'll have to drop the link in the show notes because that's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's very basic, but it's also one of those things that makes me think like, I wish I could actually do this kind of stuff like properly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Brittney, since you queued it up once, do it again.
Okay, let's transition over to our Purrfect Picks.
And Stefan, your picks are up first.
Oh, should I talk about them?
Absolutely. That's part of the fun.
All right.
This one's easy because I loved it too.
Yeah, I picked it a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? All right, cool. Okay, I'm going to say something that you might not like, but this is one of those shows that I like because, okay, good thing about it, mystery and cliffhangers at the end of every episode, and that's cool. Now, at the same time, the thing about it is that I found that the acting at times wasn't amazing, but it still got me because of those teenage mystery shows. It's really cool. So if you haven't seen it, watch it. You can binge watch 2 seasons in the space of a weekend. That's what I did. So I encourage you. I
think the story behind it is really cool.
Yeah, the story is great.
I love all the pieces of it. I would agree. There's a couple actors in there that are a little rough, but just side note, I think I said this last time. You can see clearly right there. It is 14 and up, so don't try to watch it with your 10-year-old. It's a little more intense than that.
Yeah.
And your second pick, that is not yours, is it?
Yes, that is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it's very random as well. So, okay, like a little backstory. I'll be quick about it. I talk a lot, as you may have noticed. My girlfriend is Indonesian, and she watches a lot of like Korean drama. This obviously isn't Korean drama. This is an American TV show, but she watches a lot of K-drama. I got really into K-drama, and then I just got really into Korean culture, I guess, through that. And then Kim's Convenience is freaking hilarious. Like, if you haven't watched it, it is hilarious. It is so funny. And it's one of those shows that you can watch without, you've missed 5-6 episodes, and then you watch the next one and you still get it, and it's funny. So it's an easy to watch show.
Oh, nice.
I've only watched one episode of it. I found it hilarious, but I should probably go back to it.
Yeah, it's so funny, I have to say.
Your third pick, I think, I don't know. It's almost a cheat pick.
Oh, okay. So the Svelte thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if we put it there. I'll just bring it out.
You were talking about learning to code and understand why everyone loves Svelte. So I dropped this in as like, because we were talking about Svelte a lot.
As you should. We can never give too much promotion to Svelte. So yes, learning Svelte is definitely on my list of to-dos. And I think I added to the list, I'll just mention it, even if we don't have the visual, just because if there are any other Harry Potter fans out there, like super excited, I'm just gonna say it because I don't even know if there's an official page yet. It's not even out yet. But Harry Potter, HBO Max, there's this 20-year anniversary thing, Return to Hogwarts. I don't know if it's a movie, I don't know if it's a season, but it has all the actors. It has Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, etc., etc. So if there are any Harry Potter fans out there, I'm a massive fan.
I'm very excited about it. I was looking for a link, and I don't think it's out yet. There is like a YouTube premiere, like thing. I'll drop that.
I'll drop that in.
Yeah, it's a little teaser or something, but like so excited, can't contain myself.
That's awesome. I love Harry Potter too. Okay, I think Brittney, your pick is a little on point for what we're talking about.
It is, yeah. It is the Vue.js documentary that we've been talking about a little bit that Stefan did. And I thought it was so well done. Evan Yu is a great guy. I think Scott Tolinsky's in it. It's a really good watch. Even if you don't like Vue.js, just go and watch to get a little feel for what documentaries are, what they're about, and it's really good. Oh, I saw Angular in there. Maybe you should go watch it, Alex.
Hey, I love all frameworks.
No framework bashing here. I just want to say really quickly, just because, so I know we've already mentioned it, but I just want to give credit to the person who made this documentary. So his name is Josiah McGarvey. He's the videographer behind this documentary, the GraphQL documentary, the Elixir documentary, and the Ember.js documentary. I was lucky enough to be part of the team, but just want to kind of give credit to the real magician behind that project.
For sure.
Very
Thank
cool.
you.
We'll have to grab a link afterwards. We'll put it in for him. Okay. Brittney.
My next pick, Wheel of Time, is so good. It is a show on Amazon Prime Video, and it's just, it has to be a book, and I have to go find the book series. I can't imagine this world being created without there being a book to base the show on.
I think it's a massive series, actually.
Yeah. So I need to go find it and binge read it.
Someone said this. Sorry, go ahead.
I believe what he was telling me, and this is, hopefully I got the right story here, but the author of that has so much content. I think he passed away and has like other people now trying to like continue creating the book based on things he left them.
Oh my gosh.
That's how much content there is.
Interesting.
Wow, that sounds like something.
I did watch the first episode. It was like a lot to take in. I was happy he had read the book. He explained it to me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of setup in that show, a lot of characters, and it's one of those shows. But I think it's going to be really good as it goes on.
How far are you through it?
I mean, current. So what is that? We haven't done the season finale yet.
That's a good question. I don't know.
5 or 6 episodes in?
Yeah, it looks like 5-ish.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You need to watch that.
It's really good.
So I on the train of kind of watching things, I just made it through all of Lost in Space, latest season. I had watched the first 2. I was super excited for this one to start, and I think it lived up to everything I was hoping for. The ending is very fitting, so huge props to this. I think TVPG is a great rating. Watch it with your kids. It is so cool to like talk about space and like, yeah, there's some sci-fi stuff in there, but
do you think it's
just
okay
really good
for kids?
Sure. Yeah, it totally is. And it's
interesting. I wonder if our kids would like it with us. We started it and then put it away because we have a week now till Christmas where my husband's off, so we can binge watch it this week. So maybe we'll get the kids involved and see if they like it.
Yeah, it's a really good series. I've liked it so far. I hope they continue. I haven't read anything. Maybe they are. I saw this pop through, and so I thought I'd throw it out here on Twitter. I think
you steal my link off Twitter?
I think you posted it.
I did.
It's mine now. So this icon set, how many are there? 100,000
There's a lot
icons.
of free icons in there.
It's ridiculous. So it's pretty amazing. If you're ever looking for an icon set, I guarantee you could find it. And the great part, if you click right here, it's got SVG already ready to go, which is
it's very reminiscent of Font Awesome. Was that who did the icons a few years ago? Yeah. And I feel like it still exists, but it's less like, I don't know. I feel like you have to pay for a lot of it now, but this is all free.
Yeah, they were trying to make it so commercialized, which is great. I mean,
it is, but
they were able to create a lot of things, but this is unbelievable. It kind of lines up with React icons too. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but
I think I have.
wrong link. Anyways, great setup. Stefan, it was such a pleasure having you on. I can't wait to see more of your documentaries. I'll have to talk to you offline for an idea for one, and I can't wait for Svelte documentary to come out. Brittney's probably gonna have to have like a watch party or something.
Oh yeah, he said live premiere, so.
Hey, don't worry, I'm gonna be coming at you with like live premiere suggestions left and right, probably in real life ones, because
that's what I'm hoping.
Things will be better,
Yeah, that's fingers crossed that we get through this and we can be out of lockdown by May.
Does that mean we have to fly to Germany, or where are we doing?
Probably the premiere would probably be in Amsterdam, so it would probably be in the Netherlands. But there's time to go, and either I'll find a way where I can like fly people in. If that's not possible, organize like a bunch of watch parties in different parts of the world.
That'd be awesome.
But like, yeah, definitely excited for that to go out. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, both of you. Thank you for letting me talk about like something which is I think like a bit weird, but
I don't think it's weird at all.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
thank you so much for coming. Like, yeah, we love that different perspective just to get kind of the other side. So for sure.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
See you later.
Thank you.